Good day, everyone. Welcome to an introduction to programming using C++. My name is Anil Maharaj, and I'll be guiding you through these sessions. These sessions are targeted for people who have never programmed before and are interested in learning where to start and creating their very first programs. Programming is widely used today for modern applications, be it software like the apps on your phone or PC, or hardware, such as robots or control systems. In particular, the skills learned from these sessions can be transferred to any other programming language, which you may wish to learn later on. In today's session, we will just be getting started with downloading and installing the necessary software that will be required for us to go about creating our programs. We'll also test the software to ensure that it can create our very first program. Please note that these sessions are being created for use with the Windows operating system. There is an entirely different process for Linux and Mac users regarding setting up the necessary software and actually creating the programs themselves. So the software that we're going to be using to create our programs will be Visual Studio. And if you can see here in my browser window, if I do a general Google search for Visual Studio itself, the first search result will direct me to its website where I can actually download it for free. So once I'm here, I'm going to select download Visual Studio, and I want to download the community version, which is the free version. See if I can go about doing it. Right, so the download here is going to start. Save that. Open it here. That way it can actually start installing for me. So once I open it here, it's going to be like, before we get started, we need to set up a few things so you can configure installation. So I'll just hit continue. And it will download a few files to go about installing it. Alright, and once it's ready to install, it's going to ask me which workload do I want to install for in particular. Now, there'll be like workloads, there's going to be individual components like language packs and the installation location and whatnot. What we're going to focus on today is just selecting only the required workload for these sessions in particular. So the workload that I want to use is going to be desktop development here with C++. And this is going to be important for us for creating our programs throughout these sessions themselves. I'm going to just click on this, and you can see here, in my case, the total space required is going to be 7.51 gigabytes, so make sure you do have this free space available on your PC. And I'm going to have install while downloading, so that way, while each component here is downloaded and it's completed downloading, it's going to install immediately. I'm going to just click on install here, and it's going to start the installation itself. It might ask if we want to do a survey and whatnot, but I'm going to say not now for the time being. And our install here is going to start in the background, and it's going to download and go about installing and so forth. So in the interest of time, I'm going to speed up the video, and I'll get back to you once this download itself has finished and we're going to be starting our Visual Studio itself. So once it's finished installing, and Visual Studio may ask you that you need to reboot your computer before you start Visual Studio. So you're actually going to have to do this if it does pop up for you. So we're going to restart the computer, and then I'm going to come back and actually load Visual Studio and show you guys how to go about configuring it and making our first project. So now that we've finished restarting our computer and Windows has loaded and so forth, we're actually going to load Visual Studio itself. So I'm going to go on my search icon here. I can just go here in my Windows icon, and I'm going to look for Visual Studio 2019 in my start menu here. I'm going to click on that, and Visual Studio should be loading on my screen here. So it's going to be like, hang on while we sign you in. And the thing about it is, because this is Visual Studio Community, we're going to be required to use a Microsoft.NET Passport account in order to sign in here. So that means if you automatically have like an email address associated with Microsoft services, you'll be able to go about doing this. So like a Hotmail account, an Outlook account, an MSN account, and so forth. So these will actually automatically sign in for you. If it doesn't, on the other hand, you can go about creating one for free, or you can tie your existing email account to Microsoft services using the created page for you to create your account, which will pop up with Visual Studio itself. And it's a pretty simple, straightforward process to go about doing this. So once we've logged in and everything, and Visual Studio is up here, it's going to ask us to go about we can create a new project. So you can see here I already had an existing project from my previous work, but for our instance, we're going to be creating a new project here to go about testing Visual Studio if it's installed correctly, and to create our very first program as well to make sure that everything is working smoothly. So I'm going to click on Create a New Project, and I'm going to select an empty project here. So I'm going to be starting from scratch here with C++ for Windows. I'm going to click on Next. And for this, I'm going to name this project, let's just name this Test for the time being. Now, the location here, it's going to give us a default location, but normally I prefer to put these inside my Documents folder. So I'm going to put Documents. Oh, let me just make sure this is correct. I'm going to select my Documents folder here. I'm going to select that. And then inside my Documents folder, I'm going to select like Visual Studio 2019 and Projects here, which is a folder I actually created itself. So if this folder isn't created, you can actually just type in from your actual base path here, Documents/Visual Studio 2019/projects, and it should automatically create the folder for you. You can also create a dedicated folder anywhere on your computer and just navigate it using these 3 dots here. So that way you can keep on saving all your projects inside there, and it's easy for you guys to find it and so forth and whatnot. So the project name I gave here was Test, and the solution name automatically is the same project name. The last thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I check off this box here where we'll be placing the solution and the project in the same directory. So all the files will just be in one convenient folder for us to find everything instead of being all over the place. So now I'm going to click on Create here to create my very first project. And Visual Studio will go about creating and setting up our project for us and its own integrated development environment, which is also short for IDE. So now that we have Visual Studio here up and running, you're going to see on the bottom here, it's going to be creating project test, project creation is successful. Now we're going to actually test to see if we can create our very first program in Visual Studio. And for that, I'm going to right click here on the left hand side, source files. I'm going to add new item, and I'm going to select a C++ file, and I'm going to just name this for the time being Test, because like I said, we're testing to make sure Visual Studio is installed correctly. I'm going to add this to my project, and we see here that on our right hand side we're going to get a nice text editor to actually type in some text and whatnot, which actually is going to be our program instructions, which I'm going to discuss in our next video. So for the time being, let's just zoom this in a little bit. All right. So for the time being, I'm going to type in these instructions here and just type in what I have here on the screen for us to actually test our very first program. So once you finish typing these instructions, as we can see here and so forth, we're going to go to our build menu and we're going to click on build solution. And we see we're going to get an output window here saying the build is started. And it should say build succeeded, and no fail and no up to date and no skip here. Then we're going to go to debug. I'm going to click on the top here. I'm going to click on Start Without Debugging. And we're supposed to see here that we get a console window popping up here saying hello world, which is basically the same thing that we had inside the program here saying hello world. So you can basically guess here that this instruction just outputs something to our command window screen here. And this actually here has created our very first program, which is outputting a random block of text here onto our console screen itself. So this actually shows us that Visual Studio has been installed successfully, and our first program has also been created successfully and it's running. And in some very rare cases, when you actually do debug and start without debugging, this screen might just flash on screen and then close off immediately. So just to make sure that that doesn't happen, we're going to add one other extra instruction here. And this instruction here is going to just pause the screen for us, that way it won't just flash and then just close off immediately. So I'm going to rebuild my solution here. And so I'll build solution, and then I'll go debug, start without debugging. And you can see here that our program here is up and running as expected. So this concludes our setup session for today. And in our next session, I'll explain what these instructions in the program actually do in detail. And we will look at some basic programming concepts as to how can we go about expanding our programming knowledge for using things other than text, such as like numbers or variables and other concepts as well. If there are any questions regarding this video here, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below and I will get back to you. So until our next video, take care and be safe. Later.